Joined now by Roch Kubatko of MASNsports.com, Brittany Ghiroli of MLB.com. I'm Jim. I don't have a .com, but we like to talk baseball anyway. All right, so the Orioles have too many players. That's a good thing, right? But here's the deal. You got pending players coming back or due to come back off the DL. So my question is, how do they all get on the roster?
There's a bit of a roster crunch.
There is a crunch.
There's
no doubt about it. Good problem to have, but it's a problem.
It is a good problem to have. And, J.J. Hardy, we're told, is going to be at Bowie to have a rehab assignment. I think David Lowe is going to get here first. He's going to be at Frederick today. He's supposed to play left field and bat leadoff, and he may be activated tomorrow. That's the easy one, because then you can just send down Eddie Gamboa. When Hardy comes back, though, are we talking a Ryan Flaherty or Everett Cabrera to come down to one of those two? And what happens when Jimmy Paredes is ready? Who comes off then? I don't know whether you go ahead and say, okay, is David Lowe in jeopardy because he's out of options? I'm not sure how they're going to work all that out. I think the only obvious one right now is David Lowe, Eddie Gamboa.
Right, and then the good thing, of course, is they're going to get back to that more even, more balanced roster. They're not going to have 13 pitchers. They're going to have the extra guy on the bench, which is huge. It really kind of changes what Buck can do in the late innings in terms of defensive replacements, things like that. I don't think there's a good answer for what happens when Hardy comes back. It seems like, though, when this team needs a move, an injury emerges. And as unfortunate as that may seem, they've been lucky with that so far already this season.
Yeah, but, and, again, I think maybe Cabrera might have a little bit of an advantage because he also plays center field. So maybe that keeps him around. He was getting steady work at shortstop. Now, of course, Ryan Flaherty was a late addition to the lineup today with Scope being scratched. I don't know if Ryan's in jeopardy. He has options as well, of course. Again, it's a pleasant problem to have, but it is a crunch. I know the Orioles had anticipated this. The only good thing is at least it's not a 40-man issue. Right. All these guys are already on the 40-man, so that part's easy.
All right, but here's the thing. We hear this term around here a lot, roster flexibility. They thrive on it when they can have interchangeable parts up and down. The problem is, as you alluded to, Paredes and Lowe both are out of options. So if they try to sneak in the AAA, what are the odds that they'll get through waivers? Probably not very good.
Right.
No, definitely not, especially with the way Jimmy Paredes played this spring. I mean, he really kind of set himself apart. He was a guy who they were going to try to keep no matter what. It just so happened that he got hurt. They were able to put him on the DL to start the season, but I had projected him to make that opening day lineup. Rocca, I'm sure you did as well.
No, not at all. No. What I think is funny? What I think is funny with Paredes, though.
Counterpoint.
He wasn't even on our radar when spring training started. We weren't really thinking much about Jimmy Paredes. Then all of a sudden he became this guy who had like the best camp of anybody. He's out of options, and it became an issue. What are you going to do with him? And of course, the injury, the lower back issue, bought a little bit of time. But he went from a guy who we weren't even thinking about to a guy, how do we keep him on the roster here? All
right. What about a possible trade to thin out the overcrowding? Is there any chance that might happen?
Well, I think you could trade Brittany because it's getting a little crowded in here.
Again, what happened to the
to a .com to be named later. All right, now another of the topics coming into the season, certainly in the spring training, was how do you replace Nelson Cruz and how do you replace Nick Markakis? Well, the Orioles have actually done a very good job already with that, with Alejandro Diaz and Travis Snyder, who's really done a good job in his first week as an Oriole.
Yeah, and Travis Snyder in particular did not look good for most of the spring. There was a stretch where he didn't play for a few games, and really there was no injury issue, so we thought maybe he was being buried a little bit. Then he comes storming out of the gates, had a phenomenal series in Tampa, has shown no signs of slowing down, really looks to be the guy that you thought he was going to be when they initially made this trade. I still think Nick Markakis defensively might have a little bit of a leg up on him, but Travis Snyder is younger. He seems to be fitting in this clubhouse, and he's really, really done a nice job.
And Adam Jones, of course, there's an adjustment period. He was used to have a Nick over there for so long. He said, I didn't realize Travis Snyder had that kind of range. He jokingly said they had that synchronized tumble at the trop when they bumped into each other and they making the catch. He says Travis covers more ground than you realize. The thing with Diaz that really, I think, is interesting, we kind of forget he did go to an arbitration hearing. He was the only guy, and he lost. Now he had to, and I'm going to do air quotes, ready, settle for $5 million. I would like to settle for $5 million. But nonetheless, it raised the question, how is he going to respond to that? And the Orioles had to be a little bit curious. To his credit, he showed up, great frame of mind, wasn't pouting, wasn't angry, said, look, somebody wins, somebody loses. He's put it behind him. He hasn't let it affect his play at all. He's been very, very good. Now he's a pending free agent. Guess who stands to cash in really big if he has a good season? Right.
Yeah.
Alejandro Diaz. He'll be the one holding the cards now. So this is a really big year for him.
And what we're seeing as well over the first week, and again, it's only 5 games, but Buck Showalter has quality options to go to, and if you play well, you're going to be in there. Travis Snyder's playing every day. Delman Young's only made 2 starts, and all of a sudden now, Everett Cabrera, he's playing pretty much every day at short, waiting for Hardy to come back. So again, if you play play well, Buck tends to put you in there.
Yeah, and Cabrera, what's been interesting is the last few days he's done that drill early on where he's been working with no glove, just with the tennis balls, and that's kind of something to help with his instincts, help him with barehanded plays. He's been working a lot with Bobby Dickerson. He's another guy who, Roch will tell you, did not look good for really most of spring, and then all of a sudden kind of turned it on, similar to Travis Snyder. So the Orioles have a lot of things going well for them right now when it comes to these new guys.
Yeah, Buck wanted the flexibility where you could move guys around. He liked the fact that Snyder could play left or right, that Pierce can be left or right, that Diaz can play all three outfield positions, that Cabrera, primarily a shortstop, could play second base, and they put him in the outfield. And he looked pretty comfortable in center as well. And Delman Young, much more comfortable in right than left, but he can play both of those. You'd like to have those moving pieces.
All right, MASN Roch, at MASN Roch, MASNsports.com for Roch, and MLB.com for Brittany. Thank you so much for joining us. Our first Sunday of the year. It's like a holiday.
Isn't it wonderful?
It's wonderful.
I disagree.
Wonderful.